Chloe. This time it's a story I heard from Korea that sounds like an old ghost story, or maybe a Midsummer Night's Nightmare. It's a record of one night a man experienced in the middle of a deserted mountain back in 1985, a time when the whole country was swelling with hope for the upcoming '88 Olympics. Back then, a man named Kim Young-min, alias, worked for a landscaping company. He was sent on a business trip to a remote place called Myeongsong Farm in Gongju to handle landscaping for the Olympic Park. Though he arrived in the unfamiliar city late in the evening, he was eager to get his work started and decided to find the farm that same night. The truck that gave him a ride dropped him off at the entrance to a mountain path shrouded in pitch-black darkness. "Son," the driver said ominously, "you shouldn't be walking these mountain paths at night. Folks say the roads here play tricks on you." He didn't think much of it and walked towards a faint light, just as the driver had told him. He was relieved to arrive at a small old farmhouse. "Hello," he called out. The person who answered was an old woman with piercing eyes. "I'm looking for Myeongsong Farm. You're in the wrong place," the old woman snapped, and as if she'd seen something coming up behind him, she glanced into the darkness with a terrified look before slamming the door in his face. It was frustrating, but he had no choice. He started wandering back into the darkness. But after walking for some time, the path beneath his feet disappeared, and he was surrounded by nothing but trees. The sound of branches scraping in the wind sounded like human screams. He felt like he was being watched. Just as terror began to consume him, he saw another single light in the distance. It was his last hope. The place he arrived at was a dilapidated thatched roof house that looked like it was about to collapse, a place that seemed completely abandoned. As he cleared his throat to make his presence known, the door creaked open, and there stood an old man, gaunt and thin like a shadow. Could I possibly stay for just one night? At Mr. Kim's question, the old man simply nodded and led him inside. The room he was shown to was filled with dust and cobwebs, as if no one had used it for years, and it reeked of something foul and decaying. In the corner sat a single small child's shoe. But just then, a torrential downpour began to rage outside. He was trapped. Feeling a burning thirst, he opened a small door that looked like it led to a kitchen. Out of the darkness, the old man handed him a gourd dipper full of water. The water was strangely, impossibly cold and clear. He thanked the old man, drank the water down, and in that moment, he lost consciousness. How much time had passed? When Mr. Kim opened his eyes, he was not in that dilapidated house. He was in a quiet hermitage, a small temple nestled deep in the mountains. Tending to him was a monk. Amazingly, this monk was the very owner of Myeongsong Farm he had been searching for, Song Ki-hoon. Mr. Kim told him everything that had happened the night before, about the old house and the eerie old man who lived there. The monk's face grew heavy as he listened. Amitabha Buddha. It seems that vengeful spirit has not yet been able to move on. The monk began to tell a terrible, tragic story that had happened on that mountain decades ago. In that house, there lived an old man and his beautiful granddaughter. But one day, the granddaughter was horribly assaulted and murdered by a hiker. The old man, having lost his granddaughter, lost his will to live. For days, he refused to leave her body's side and eventually starved to death right there next to her. The villagers who found them later, feeling pity for the souls with no relatives, cremated their bodies along with the house itself as a funeral. That was more than 20 years ago. The house he had stayed in, the old man he had met, they didn't exist in this world. Mr. Kim realized that on that night, he had slept in the ghost of a burned-down house, given water by a ghost. The monk continued. Since then, hikers have occasionally gone missing in that mountain. A few were found weeks later on the opposite side of the mountain, dehydrated and delirious. All of them babbled the same nonsense about an old man in a dilapidated house who gave them a drink of water. Do you think this story was a supernatural phenomenon where a vengeful spirit lured people into its domain? Or was it just a terrifying nightmare a lost man had after collapsing from exhaustion? Please leave your thoughts in the comments.